Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver, and I'm telling y'all, I am fired up for today's show. Nothing, and I do mean nothing, but NFL today. May have some NBA tomorrow, not sure. Maybe discuss a little bit of Brooklyn Nets, Los Angeles Lakers, Golden State Warriors. Who knows? That's for tomorrow. Let's focus on the present. We got a lot of NFL to discuss. The Colts, moving on from Frank Reich and hiring Jeff Saturday to be their interim head coach. I will do my very best, as I always try to do, to provide whatever context is there, if there even is any. I'll discuss that. Aaron Rodgers is it seemed like he has to remind some people who he is on the Pat McAfee show, and now his receivers are finally pushing back of his continued criticism. Week in and week out, they're tired of being the, quote, scapegoat. I'll get into that story later. Also, to discuss the show today, Lamar Jackson, once again, phenomenal performance against the New Orleans Saints, leading the Ravens to yet another win. I think that this is just the start of what could be a big winning streak for these Baltimore Ravens. And, of course, at the end of the show, I will predict tonight's NFC South matchup between the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. Atlanta wins tonight, folks, and they have sole possession for the moment of the NFC South. He's got Tampa Bay going to Germany to play the Seahawks. So that's going to be a very, very interesting matchup that I cannot wait to predict tomorrow. But first, it has been the story that has seemingly dominated the NFL for about a week now. Is Odell Beckham Jr. going to end up on the Dallas Cowboys? Or really, where is Odell going to end up? There's numerous teams he mentioned. He's mentioned teams like the Buffalo Bills, a possible reunion with the New York Giants, among others. One of those teams he did mention by mouth, the Dallas Cowboys. Now, according to Ian Rappaport, he said, quote, the Cowboys have Odell in their sights. Jerry Jones, good old Jerry, right? Doing his weekly interview with 105.3 The Fan in Dallas, just like all the other owners do, said, quote, Odell is, quote, someone we have, let me do my best, Jerry, someone we have all the appreciation in the world for what he is as a competitor. And I know that the Dallas Cowboys star in his helmet would look good when he puts that helmet on. So Jerry's trying to recruit Odell. Mike McCarthy, head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, said he has always been a huge fan of Beckham. Okay. You have Ezekiel Elliott, coming in front of the Dallas Cowboys media. Okay. And he's talking about how much he'd love to see Odell in Dallas. Excuse me. Micah Parsons on Twitter is recruiting Odell with a Photoshop picture of Odell in a Cowboys uniform. Everybody in Dallas wants Odell. And I will tell you this. Of all the teams that are trying to get Odell Beckham Jr., and it appears, according to Jay Glazer, great Fox NFL insider on this past Sunday, he said Odell's expected to be medically cleared by the end of the week from that torn ACL from the Super Bowl. Of all the teams that want Odell Beckham Jr., I think the Cowboys makes the most sense. First of all, he would be a necessity in Dallas more than any other team outside of, I think, the Giants, and nobody thinks the Giants has any shot of getting to the Super Bowl. Not to say the Cowboys are contenders, because, I'm very, very weary on that. Give it a couple weeks. To me, they take care of business in Green Bay, and if they go on the road to beat Minnesota, okay, you may get some buy-in on Carving It Up Live. But until then, I have my reservations. But he will be more of a necessity in Dallas than he would be in Buffalo, or possibly, say, the Los Angeles Chargers, which I've heard some people have thrown out there. I myself, on Sunday in an IG Live with my man Patrick Brown, shout out to the Chaotic Sports Podcast, I suggested, hey, who's to say he wouldn't go to Philadelphia? I don't know. They've got Devontae Smith, they got A.J. Brown. In Dallas, they need him. Because when we talk about the Cowboys as a possible Super Bowl contender, we have no doubts about the defense. The defense is what we're all like, okay, that's fine. No, excuse me. Nobody is like losing sleep about what that defense can wreak havoc, right? They lead the NFL in sacks. Micah Parsons has been absolutely unbelievable to me. He's the front runner to win Defensive Player of the Year, which I predicted before the season started. Trayvon Diggs has improved drastically as a cover corner, a pure cover corner from last year to this year. You got guys like Dorrance Armstrong having a big year rush to the passer. DeMarcus Lawrence playing well. Leighton Vander Esch. Everybody in that Dallas Cowboys defense seems to be playing well right now. Okay? You have all these different components. Offensively is where we have a lot of questions, right? Offensive line, we think, is good. It's exceeded expectations given the guys they lost in free agency, being Connor Williams, or as I call him, Mr. Holding, because Holding, offense number 52, got old after a while. Lyle Collins left to go to Cincinnati, and then Tyron Smith went down with that torn hamstring in training camp and isn't expected to be back for at least another month. Given that, I think the offensive line's actually been pretty good. Ezekiel Elliott, I think, has played very well. Tony Pollard, we saw what he did against Chicago Bears. I've been saying Tony Pollard needs to be the Cowboys starting back for years now. He's good. We know they're fine at quarterback. You ain't got to know where he's about Dak Prescott. It's the skill position players. Can you really? Because when we talk about Super Bowl contenders, when we say Super Bowl contenders, we mean teams that can actually hoist the Lombardi Trophy. Teams that we can actually see on February the 12th around, let's see, that's in Arizona, so 8 o'clock Mountain. I guess they're in Mountain time. I'm not sure. My friends in Arizona, please correct me on that if I'm wrong. But around 8 o'clock-ish Arizona time, you can actually see that team raising the Lombardi Trophy as confetti falls from the ceiling. Do you see the Cowboys as that? With CeeDee Lamb, who's a 2, as your number 1, who with Michael Gallup, who is, in my opinion, a lower end 2 as your number 2 guy, with Noah Brown, who's more of a 4 as your 3, with the likes of possibly James Washington coming back. You're not certain, right? You have guys like possibly, Cowboys were promoting Jalen Tolbert like crazy this offseason. That's not going to work. It's not going to work. Not when you have Tampa Bay with the likes of Evans and Godwin and all those different guys. Not when you have teams like Seattle with Metcalf and Lockett. Not when you have teams like the Philadelphia Eagles with A.J. Brown and what's the kid's name? Forgot Devontae Smith for the Philadelphia Eagles. Not when you have Kirk Cousins, who's got a plethora of weapons. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and T.J. Hawkinson. Lamb, Gallup, Brown, that ain't going to cut it. That's not going to cut it. It's a good thing the Cowboys the NFC, because if the AFC, they get murdered in the wild card round by some of those quarterbacks with those weapons. You bring Odell in, changes all of that. Now, do the Cowboys have a number 1 receiver? Is Odell Beckham Jr. number 1 receiver? It's debatable, right? His numbers ever since 2019 have gone down just about every year. But when you look at overall production in the role that he played, particularly with the Rams last year as the number 2 behind Kupp, gosh, he's excellent. You have the likes of Lamb and Odell taking attention away from one another, keeping the defense on their heels. And keep in mind, folks, the people that try to downplay the impact that Odell Beckham Jr. has on the football field ain't watching the games. He caught a touchdown pass in the Rams' wild card win over the Cardinals. Also threw a 40-yard pass, for what it's worth. He had 113 receiving yards in the NFC Championship game, including a huge catch on third down on one of those drives in the fourth quarter for the Rams. And in the Super Bowl, folks, I'm not so sure Odell wouldn't have been Super Bowl MVP had he finished the game and not torn his ACL. 2 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown. And what I always say, you guys, I talk ad nauseum. I'm going to try and not talk about it too much because we're not even a month into the NBA season, but we talk about most valuable player in the NBA regular season. It drives me crazy. You guys know it drives me crazy because there's not enough emphasis on the middle initial, V, valuable. What's valuable mean? To me, what is that team? What is your team like without you? Everywhere Odell's left has gotten exponentially worse since he left. The Giants, when they traded him to the Cleveland Browns after the 2018 season, took them 4 years to get their act together till this year. Took them 2 more head coaches, a quarterback change, a general manager change. Took them a lot of stuff. Cleveland, remember the whole, is it Baker's fault? Is it Odell's fault? Yeah, that question was answered pretty quickly once Odell got released and then picked up by the Rams. Browns haven't gotten their act together since. Okay, they're hoping Amari Cooper's that number 1 guy, but trust me, as somebody who's watched a lot of Cowboy games, he comes and he goes. That's why I was never like, oh my God, I can't believe the Cowboys traded Amari Cooper. I was mad at what they got in return. That was my issue, not that they got rid of him. I didn't have any issue with that. Given his production just going up and down, inconsistent. And look at the Rams without him. They still have the same quarterback. They still have that same number one receiver. Still got some of those offensive pieces. Van Jefferson. They've been a train wreck offensively. And now they're sitting there at 3-5. Matt Stafford's in concussion protocol. Looks like the Rams aren't even going to make the playoffs. Odell's a little bit of impact in terms of value. So if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you're Jerry Jones. You'd be a fool to let this guy go. You'd be a fool to let this guy walk elsewhere just because you got to pay a little more than maybe you're comfortable paying him. Or because one of the things Odell said he wants is a multi-year deal. He's like, he enjoyed sort of the rock star, because Odell was not just a well-known football player. Guy was a celebrity. Okay, there was a while, I don't know if it's still the case, but there was a while where he was the most followed NFL player on Instagram. Like he was almost had like that NBA player or international soccer stardom, right? Because he played in big New York City, the Big Apple, right? And we know he was kind of an international star and things of that nature. Cleveland, not as big. Then goes to big, shiny Los Angeles. And he's kind of been bounced around a little bit. He's a father now. I think he and his girlfriend, I'm not sure if they're engaged or not, but they're starting a family. He wants to settle down. He says he wants a multi-year deal. If you're the Dallas Cowboys, don't you dare let that push you back. Don't let the money push you back like it did with Von Miller. You've got the cap space. Make it work. Get Odell Beckham Jr. He wants to go there. Cowboys players want them to go there. Apparently, Jerry at least says he wants him to go there. The head coach says he's a big fan of his. By the way, Vegas has the Cowboys as the favorite to land Odell. Make it happen. Grady Edwards, my man, is in the comments section. What's up, Grady? He says Odell should sit out the whole season and just get healthy for next season. That's an interesting take. I disagree for the simple fact because there's that worry like, oh, is he coming back too early from the ACL? From what I've read, from what Odell has said and what other reporters around at the time when he played with the Rams last year said, part of the reason he tore his ACL in that Super Bowl, it was already torn because it had never fully healed because the Browns medical staff didn't do a good enough job of putting the ACL back together. So there was still a slight tear there. Super Bowl, playing on that turf in SoFi Stadium, and it got him. Rams doctors, from what I'm reading, folks, something about the Rams, I didn't think I'd be talking about the Los Angeles Rams medical staff a whole lot today, but think about Cam Akers. Cam Akers last year, it's one of the most unbelievable comebacks from injuries I've seen. Like in terms of the speed of it. Cam Akers tore his Achilles, way more serious. Tore his Achilles in July. He came back for January in time for the playoff run for the Rams. What? That's how good this Rams medical staff is. So Odell says he's ready to go. He says his ACL feels way better than when he came back from the first ACL tear in 2020. That's from Odell's perspective. It's also from the perspective of a lot of reporters covering this situation. And Grady asks, Dallas winning a playoff game this season? It all depends on the matchup, and a lot of it hinges on whether or not they win the division. Now, that's going to be really hard considering what Philadelphia's schedule is, where they sit right now. Dallas at 2 games back. Of course, they lost that game in week 6. That's going to be really hard for the Cowboys to try and come back from. Look, it's still tough for the Cowboys because, honestly, if the Cowboys are a wild card team, I want them to be the 7 seed. As the playoff standings stand right now, I want them to be the 7 seed. Because if they're the 5 seed, they got to go visit Tom Brady. I don't want that. Like I said on Monday's show, if they're the 6 seed, they got to go to loud, noisy Seattle with that defense. I don't want that. Pete Carroll versus Mike McCarthy? I don't want no part of that. Go to Minnesota? Okay, it's a little bit of a difference, right? Weather's not a factor. None of us trust Kirk Cousins in big games. Dak has routinely outplayed Kirk Cousins. If the Cowboys don't win the NFC East and it doesn't look like they're going to, then I want them to be the 7 seed or whatever seed matches up with Minnesota. I'd much rather play Minnesota as opposed to the Niners or the Seahawks or the Bucks. Absolutely. So that I didn't really give you an answer there, Grady, but here's my answer. It depends on the matchup. It is all dependent on whatever the matchup is for the Dallas Cowboys. But all that's to say, Jerry, go get Odell. I don't think it's a decision that you will come to regret, given the impact that he has had on all three teams that he has been a part of. Now, moving on to the Monday night game, which I did predict the Ravens to win. I did not think that they would win this comfortably, given the fact that it's the Saints defense. It is still the Superdome. It's one of the loudest venues in the NFL. The Saints had just finished shutting out the Raiders, right? Seem like they're building their momentum a little bit. Andy Dalton's playing all right. And Baltimore came in and pretty much smacked them. Now, I've got two major takes from this game. Not really a whole lot from the Saints. I thought the Saints would be a playoff team this year. I actually picked Jameis Winston to be my comeback player of the year. It's actually going to be another quarterback who's probably going to win that, being Geno Smith. But safe to say I was dead wrong about the New Orleans Saints coming into the season. But for the Baltimore Ravens, and I sort of alluded to this after the Tampa Bay win a couple Thursday nights ago, and I still hold true to it today. The Ravens, as they sit right now, folks, they could get the number one seed in the AFC. They could get the number one seed in the AFC. Buffalo has a big, fat question mark surrounding their quarterback's health. Like, I don't have a Josh Allen segment on the show today, but what I will tell you today is, if that arm isn't right, ain't no way I'm playing Josh Allen this week against the Minnesota Vikings. I get you don't want to throw Case Keenum to the fire against a great pass. Listen, if it costs me the division to the Miami Dolphins, or dare I say the New York Jets, fine. I got Josh Allen, and I got all those weapons. I got Sean McDermott, I got that defense. I can go on a road wild card run to the Super Bowl. I've got the talent to do that if I'm the Buffalo Bills. Play it safe with Josh Allen. Big question mark surrounding the Bills. Chiefs barely survived a game in which the quarterback for the opposition completed 5 passes. Their quarterback, being Patrick Mahomes, had to throw the ball 68 times. And as I said on Monday's show, I'm a little concerned about Kansas City, the fact that they're not committing to the run. They're in these dogfights with teams with no offense whatsoever. And you got the likes of Patrick Mahomes, who he himself said recently, yeah, I kind of got out of hand. I don't really need to be throwing, nor want to be throwing 68 passes, basically saying Kansas City's going to run him into the ground if they're using him that much. Look at the Ravens' schedule. So first of all, as the standings sit right now, going into Week 10, Week 10 starts tonight, Falcons, Panthers, which I'll predict at the end of the show. Ravens sit a half game back of that number one seed in the AFC. Half a game back of the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. Buffalo with the advantage because they beat the Chiefs a few weeks back. Look at the Ravens' schedule moving forward. They face the Carolina Panthers, who you'll see tonight, which right now, as it stands, ESPN has the Ravens as a 12.5-point favorite. I think they'll cover. They've got the Jaguars, and the Jaguars have played some teams close, but Baltimore is clearly and obviously better than Jacksonville. They've got the Let's Ride Broncos at home. They've got at Pittsburgh, at Cleveland, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. I don't see more than 2 possible losses. Pittsburgh and Baltimore, doesn't matter how good or how bad one of those teams are, they always play close ones. They always do. Always have. Probably always will. It's a great rivalry. One of those games might be close. But outside of Cincinnati, there is no debate that the Ravens will be favored in every single one of their games moving forward. Cincinnati will likely be favored in that last game of the season, which could decide the division. Maybe, considering the coaching situation in Cincinnati, which I'm not terribly fond of, not even sure if they'll be in that position come Week 18. But you look at Baltimore's schedule, folks, they could run the table. The way that defense has completely turned around since their abysmal 3-4 games to start this year, the way that Lamar Jackson is catching fire, mind you, without his number one receiver and without his number one pass catcher, that being Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is a top 3 tight end in the NFL. Absolutely. He's out. Devin Duvernay is out. So you're dealing with all these injuries to your receiving core. And Lamar Jackson's still out there posting 70 QBRs, high passer rating, which leads me in my second segment. Folks, as it stands right now, you guys know when I do rankings and when I talk about teams, when I talk about individual players, I'm a big believer in the I always call it the Janet Jackson theory. It's the what have you done for me lately theory. I don't care what you did last year or last week, but I think your body of work matters. Absolutely. But what have you done for me lately? Today, what is it? I'm looking at my computer. November the 10th of 2022. Today, Lamar Jackson is top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I will say it again. Today, Lamar Jackson is a top 5 quarterback in the National Football League. Only guys that I would absolutely unequivocally take above Lamar. There's 3 of his contemporaries, ironically, in the same conference. Mahomes, Allen, Burrow. That's it. And then it's a debate between Lamar and Brady, and we just saw them play, and Lamar vastly outplayed Tom. And I think Tom's going to get this thing turned around now that his whole family situation seems to be resolved and what comes with that. But Lamar outplayed him just 2 weeks ago. You tell me, you taking Aaron Rodgers over Lamar Jackson? You're really taking Aaron Rodgers over Lamar Jackson today? Really? Guy who's putting up career low numbers. Guy who's proven to be one of the worst leaders in the National Football League in recent memory. As opposed to the guy in Lamar Jackson who galvanizes the locker room. Folks, the man wins 75% of his games. Don't know what more you could ask. He's won in the playoffs. He's won playing from behind. He's coachable. He's a phenomenal teammate. He's one of the best throwers of the football in the NFL. Check the numbers. Top 5 quarterback passing from the pocket. He's obviously electric running the football. You tell me, other than Allen, Mahomes, and to me, Burrow, who are you absolutely taking over Lamar Jackson today? Who are you taking? Let's just go division by division. You know me. I am the biggest Dak Prescott fan on this planet. Folks, I wear his hat. I'm literally doing it right now. I wear his hat 80% of my shows. 90% maybe. Who knows? I can't put him above Lamar. Lamar's won more games, in some cases put up better numbers than Dak, and he has an MVP, and they both have one playoff win. I love Dak. I think Dak right now is just a couple spots outside of the top 5. I can't take him over Lamar. Jalen Hurts to me is broken into the top 10 with what he's done this season. He is an MVP candidate. Body of work matters. What have you done for me lately? Lamar Jackson has been a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts, given the degree of difficulty. Okay, look at guys like, I mentioned Rodgers, I mentioned Brady. It's a toss-up between Lamar and Brady. I'd probably take Lamar, honestly, because he just outplayed Brady 2 weeks ago. Look at the AFC. You're taking Tua? Really? Really? You're taking Tua over Lamar Jackson? You're taking guys like, who else? You're taking Kyler Murray? What's Kyler Murray done in the playoffs? What has he done this season? Folks, the Cardinals are 3-6. Kyler's been awful, especially late games. That's one of the big differences. Not just leadership. Could not be more different when you compare Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. Could not be more different in terms of leadership. Late game situations, the Cardinals, Kyler in particular, have been terrible. Lamar's been flawless. Matt Stafford. And won the Super Bowl. What's he done this year? Rams are 3-5. Matt Stafford is leading the NFL in interceptions. Lamar Jackson will have Cooper Kupp. Lamar Jackson does not have Sean McVay. Doesn't have the weapons that Matt Stafford does. Okay? You look at AFC, AFC West. Yeah, I'm taking Mahomes. Obviously, I'm taking Mahomes over Lamar Jackson. I love Justin Herbert. Guy is absolutely a top 10 quarterback in the league. I'm not taking Herbert over Lamar Jackson. No. He wins more, does more with less. He's more consistent in late game situations. And folks, go back, check the tape from 2020. I said Justin Herbert was going to be the best quarterback in that class over Tua and over Burrow. I love Justin Herbert, and I love what I've seen from him. Look at the tape. Look at this season and beyond. Lamar Jackson's been a better quarterback than Justin Herbert. He's outperformed the likes of Derek Carr and obviously Russell Wilson this year. You tell me, Y'all want to get in the comment section? Feel free. Absolutely feel free. You tell me 5 quarterbacks that you would take today over Lamar. I'm not taking Rodgers or Herbert or Kyler. Even Dak. Wouldn't take Jalen Hurts over him. In terms of the impact that this guy brings to the table, in terms of his dual threat ability, in terms of what he's doing with less than all the guys I just mentioned, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to just ignore that? And then back to the Ravens. This team could be the number 1 seed in the AFC when it's all said and done. If you look at their schedule, outside of the Cincinnati game at the end, they will be favored in every single one of these games moving forward. If you didn't hear me say beforehand, I'll go back over the Ravens' remaining schedule. Panthers, they already are favored by double digits. Jaguars, they'll be favored. Broncos, they'll be favored. Steelers, they'll be favored. Browns, now Deshaun will be back by that point, but I assume they'll be favored. They'll be favored over Atlanta. They'll be favored over Pittsburgh. And then they got a road date at Cincinnati. We'll see. Like, that could be a situation where the Bengals are like a 1-point favorite. Just because they're at home, we'll assume by that point they'll be in the playoffs, or at least just on the outside looking in the last week of the season. Top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. In this order, 1 through 5. Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar, Brady. And you could convince me to take Tom out of the top 5. You really could. Absolutely. Lamar's in that class. And he's going to get paid this offseason. And I warned the Ravens about this coming into the season. I said, you better be careful. If you don't give Lamar what he wants, you'll wish you did. Because then Lamar's going to want more after this season. Give him what he's doing. I'm just throwing that out there. Very, very careful. The Cowboys learned their lesson with Dak. The Ravens are going to have to learn the exact same way with their superstar quarterback, Lamar Jackson. But I love, listen, and I wasn't big on Lamar in 2018. I don't know a whole lot of people that were big on Lamar in 2018. Kind of like a funky throwing motion, and some even suggested he should be a wide receiver. Yeah, this guy's fantastic. He really is. Now moving to the Indianapolis Colts. Man, they are doing their best to compete with the likes of the Washington Commanders and the Detroit Lions and teams like that for the biggest clown show organizations in the NFL. Now, Washington tops the list because they got a bunch of legal issues, because their owner appears to be a crook. We'll see how that turns out. Please sell the team, Dan Snyder. Just let it go. And Detroit, obviously, the coaching selections, the coaching hires have been dubious at best. You look at the Indianapolis Colts, though. They fired Frank Reich after a rough start to the season. I will say this quickly about Frank Reich. He's going to get a job this offseason. If he doesn't, then he's going to go the Mike McCarthy or Doug Peterson route. Take a year off. He'll take a year off from coaching. I highly doubt that Frank Reich's going to be a coordinator somewhere next year. I could be wrong on that. I could be wrong. Maybe one of these guys, somebody gets a job next year and they hire him to be their offensive coordinator. If so, great hire for them, but I just don't see Frank Reich going back into that role. Like, he's not one of these coaches where he was really good as a coordinator and stunk as a head coach. We've seen guys, heck, there are guys in the NFL currently that are sort of going through that. It's not the case. Frank Reich is a very good head coach. I will defend a coach who wins games, has his team in position to make the playoffs year in and year out when they don't have a franchise quarterback. Ever since the abrupt retirement of Andrew Luck in August of 2019, it was a revolving door of guys. It was Jacoby Brissett, and then it was a 40-year-old Phillip Rivers, who, by the way, he made the playoffs with. Then it was Carson Wentz, who he should have made the playoffs with if Wentz didn't gag the last 2 games against the Raiders and Jaguars. And now this year, it's an old and clearly washed-up Matt Ryan and Sam Ehlinger. It's not a whole lot to work with. And so I get after a while, maybe the coach's voice rings hollow in the locker room, and I get that. I understand. After a while, maybe it starts to get a little old. But this guy's a brilliant offensive coach. He is a leader of men. He will get a job this next offseason. If not, I see him taking a year off from coaching, just like McCarthy did, just like Peterson did. Peterson actually, was, after all, he did work with Peterson in Philadelphia, won a Super Bowl there in 2017. Frank Reich is a very good head coach. But what the Colts decided to do, and I thought it was a joke. I mean, listen, we've seen what's going on with Twitter right now with the blue checks. We don't know who to trust. Just anybody can be a verified source, quote unquote. It's hard to trust what you're seeing. So I thought it was a joke when I saw it flash across my phone Monday afternoon. Indianapolis Colts named Jeff Saturday as interim coach. I'm like, there's no way. Is this like the NFL memes account? There's no way. Is this a parody account? No, it's real. It's real. So Jeff Saturday, who, let me get this out of the way. Really good guy, really smart. Absolutely. Jeff Saturday, everybody I've ever heard talk about Jeff Saturday, they love him. And as a matter of fact, part of it was so shocking is because I just finished watching Jeff Saturday like a few days prior, breaking down offensive line play on ESPN. He's brilliant. If a coach wants next offseason wants to hire Jeff Saturday as their O-line coach, go for it, because that's a great hire. He's great at breaking down the film on ESPN. He's a really good analyst, really good at his job, and he's a good guy. So I don't want to make this sound like it's personal towards Jeff Saturday, because I really, really like him. This has got to be a joke if you're the Indianapolis Colts and Jim Irsay in particular. Now, we know Jim Irsay has tended to be in that category among the impulsive owners. There's a lot of those, and he's definitely in that category. But to name a guy who has no college coaching experience, none, not as a coordinator, not as an O-line coach, nothing, or as an NFL coach. First of all, he's making history. It's the first time since 1961 that a coach has been hired with no previous college or NFL experience. So you have that. You have the Colts making history in that regard. And he's taken over a team and bringing his staff in, folks. His staff, his coordinators in particular, have never called a play in the NFL. His whole staff never called a play in the NFL. The only reason that this would make sense is for the Colts to tank to get a high draft pick. It's the only reason this makes sense. Now, he is an interim head coach, not a head coach. This isn't full-time. He's not going to be there next year, unless the Colts get on some crazy hot streak, which is, given the experience of that coaching staff, seems next to impossible. Heck, given how the Colts have looked on the field, looks next to impossible. I don't really have words to describe it. Unless Indianapolis is tanking, which is totally possible, by the way, with given how they've looked this season, given the fact that this is a really good quarterback draft. There's at least four really good prospects. Hoping to get one of them possibly. I don't get it. It is, as many have detailed, the good old boy system striking again, if we're being completely honest. It is Jim Irsay making another impulsive decision. And it is one of the more questionable moves that I've seen in the NFL in quite some time. This has the potential to be one of the biggest disasters in the NFL in recent memory. We've seen coaches just this season who have experience. Josh McDaniels, Nathaniel Hackett in particular. I'd go so far as to put Dan Campbell in that group. You guys, I love Dan Campbell as a guy. Love him. Seems like a great hang. Probably the number one coach in the NFL that you would want to go grab a beer with. Absolutely. He's a great guy. He's an awful head coach. So those three. Guys who have experienced coaching. Two of those guys had already been head coaches. Campbell, although he was an interim in Miami in 2015, and McDaniels in Denver. And they're awful. Out-schemed, out-prepared, bad situationally. What's Jeff Saturday? And what's that staff going to look like? Now, lucky for the Colts, that's their first game, ironically, in the what is going to be brief Jeff Saturday era against Josh McDaniels and the Raiders, who are missing Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow. I think there's some questions about Devontae Adams' health, as well as Josh Jacobs' health. So this is a good game for the Colts to get, with an inexperienced coaching staff. Best game, I guess, they could have possibly gotten, given the circumstances. The only way that this makes sense is that Indianapolis is tanking. Otherwise, I can't wrap my head around it. I don't get it. The first time since 1961 a coach has been brought in with no previous college or NFL experience. Haven't we learned this lesson in politics? I know we had just had the midterms the other day. Hope everybody went out there and voted. But haven't we learned this in politics? People with zero experience generally aren't very good. The same is definitely true in the NFL. Now, listen, you can have, like some people in Washington, 40 years of experience. Doesn't necessarily make you good, but you'd rather roll with the guy or the gal who has been around the block as opposed to rolling with somebody who's never seen the block. Okay, so I don't get it. I don't want to come off too strong because I like Jeff Saturday that much. I really, really like the guy. But man, what the heck, Indianapolis? Listen, I don't have words for this one. I really thought, given all the situation with Twitter right now, I really thought this was a joke. It ain't. Jeff Saturday just did a press conference with Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard, the general manager. He just did a press conference yesterday. Yeah. By the way, what's Indianapolis' schedule? So like I mentioned, they got the Raiders in Vegas on Sunday afternoon. After that, they got Philadelphia. That's going to be a bloodbath. They got Pittsburgh, Dallas, that could get ugly. Minnesota, that could get ugly. Chargers, that could get ugly. Giants, that could get ugly. And then they finish with the Texans. Look, I know the Colts don't have like championship aspirations by any stretch of the imagination, but come on. Parks Frazier never called a play in the NFL. Jeff Saturday never coached a down in any level as it pertains to college and professionally. You tell me. Is it just the good old boy system striking again? Is it that along with the Colts trying to tank for a draft pick? I don't know. What it does show is another example that the Rooney system is broken and needs to be amended and needs to be changed and needs to be looked at seriously, which we'll see if the NFL does or doesn't do. But moving to a team, let me get a drink for this one. Moving to a team that, similar to the Colts, has been disappointing in a lot of people's eyes. Not mine, because I called this back in March. As like I said on Monday, because I don't want to like beat my chest about the teams I've been so right on, like the Packers or the Vikings or a team like that. But I've been dead wrong on some teams. Denver, folks, I predict the Broncos to win the Super Bowl and makes me want to puke. That coming out of my mouth into this mic into your ears. I hate saying that, but I did predict that. I thought the Raiders would make the playoffs. I thought the Rams would get back to the Super Bowl. Looks like they're not even going to get to the playoffs. I wasn't very high in Philadelphia, but they're still undefeated. There's a lot of predictions I made this season that haven't aged terribly well. One that did, though, is that Green Bay was not going to make the playoffs. Now, I might have overestimated them, as it seems to be. I said they'd be 9-8. Doesn't look like they're going to get to that, given their schedule. I mean, their next three games are Cowboys, Titans, Eagles. They should be thanking their lucky stars if they win one of those games. Dallas is clearly better. Tennessee is better. And Philadelphia is clearly better. And that game's in Philadelphia, by the way. But we got a couple of Packers-related stories. It feels like I always say, like, Thursday is where we always react to what Aaron Rodgers said on Tuesday on the Pat McAfee Show, or Wednesday in his weekly media availability with the Packers media. But first of all, let's talk about what Aaron Rodgers said, and then get into a report from a very trusted source. I'll tell you who it is in just a second. It's from ESPN about the Packers receivers and how they're feeling about this. So Aaron Rodgers is on the Pat McAfee Show. He's on there every Tuesday. And, he's talking about the game. Obviously, the Packers lost 15-9 to Minnesota. Rodgers threw 3 picks. One of the worst games of his career. And he said, quote, "I always believe in myself first, and I bet on myself first to go out there and to impact the game and to be great." All right, it's cool. I still know I have that within me. I'm still the reigning, defending, two-time MVP, regardless of who's out there with me. Guys want to come battle. If guys want to come battle, they know where to find me. I'll be in the corner of that huddle expecting greatness, trying to inspire the best I can and lay it out on the line. He went on to say, quote, "Look, I've thrown touchdown passes many times. I don't give a blank what any of these experts on TV have to say. There's a lot that goes into these things. And for someone to play armchair quarterback who doesn't know what the heck we're running or what's going on, that's fine. I don't give a blank, to be honest with you." Well, first of all, him saying twice, "I don't give a what we think." I always says, anytime somebody says, "I don't care what you say," they really care what you have to say. Whether it's someone like in your personal life or they really care. So that's number one. And Aaron talks about the quote unquote haters. He talks about them a lot. Like it's something that I've even criticized LeBron for. It's like, Bron, you got a lot of haters. Bron's got a lot more haters than Aaron, obviously. Bigger platform, more well known. But like, dude, eventually we get it. Now, if you want to bring up the haters after you accomplish something really big, have at it. You accomplished something. But when you're sitting there at 3-6, when you're sitting there as a team that is highly unlikely to make the postseason after posting the number 1 seed the last 2 years, after you, as you reminded us, Aaron Rodgers, being the back-to-back MVP, just like I said with Lamar Jackson being a top 5 quarterback in the NFL and why I have him there. What have you done for me lately? Here's what I know about the great Aaron Rodgers, who a guy who I've always been consistent on this, is absolutely, without a question, without a shadow of a doubt, a top 10 quarterback in the history of this league. I put him, a lot of people are Favre guys and gals. Not just because of the off-field stuff, but I've never been a Favre guy. But Aaron Rodgers this season, okay, he's posting darn near career lows in every statistical category in his career. This season, he is tied for 27th in picks. He is also tied, he's 27th in the league in QBR. QBR, folks, for those of you who don't know, is 0 to 100. It's just like a test. It's 0 to 100. Aaron Rodgers right now is a QBR of 36. We can blame that on his bad receiving core, which, by the way, I said this season, I gave him a pass there. Although what I didn't give him a pass on was the fact that he drove Devontae Adams out of the building to go play with the Las Vegas Raiders. I did give Aaron Rodgers the slight pass that he has an incompetent head coach, which is now getting exposed because the Packers are bottom 5 in the NFL in second half scoring. They're not making adjustments at halftime. It's evident. It's clear. Not committing to the run despite having 2 very capable running backs and a good offensive line. Not all this is Aaron Rodgers' fault. I've been the first to say that. But like I said, take at least a little bit of accountability. Tell me I'm trying to inspire, and you always come to me in the locker room. Why does he got to say that publicly? Why does he have to rip his receivers to the media and say, if they're not playing well, we're gonna have to give other guys a shot. If you're not cutting it, we got to bench you. Dang, you got to say that publicly? And then say some people can't. It's like the Jack Nicholson line, right? You can't handle the truth. It's like, well, I don't really want you putting that in front of the whole world to see. And now the Packers receivers, it looks like, are pushing back. According to a report from ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, it indicates there appears to be a growing discord within Green Bay stemming from the notion that, quote, some of the young wide receivers have been painted as scapegoats for the team's struggles. So now the Packers receivers are like, enough. You've been kicking us around constantly. Can't we have can't you share at least a little bit of blame? We haven't been playing well. Neither of you. You threw an interception on the 1-yard line when you were trying to target David Bakhtiari. It was a beautifully designed trick play for the Packers. Left tackle David Bakhtiari was wide open, and Aaron Rodgers threw it way, way short, and Aiden Hutchinson, the second overall pick in the draft, picked it off. Okay, he made numerous throws in that game where it's like, what are you doing? Where are you looking with the football? Eventually, when someone keeps, poking the bear, doesn't matter if it's a baby bear or a big grizzly bear. Eventually, the bear's going to get a little pissed off and want to fight back. That's what's going on now with the Packers receiving core. So when their quarterback is trying to spin his own narrative, when he is making it as clear, crystal clear as he can possibly make it, that guys, everybody, it is not my fault. What's going on here? Just want y'all to know that. I think it's tiring after a while. If you are Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Sammy Watkins, Alan Lazard, gets a little tiring after a while. Never forget, Tom Brady had a receiving core in 2018 with the likes of guys like Julian Edelman, who, everybody likes Julian Edelman, okay? Chris Hogan. He once had a guy named Malcolm Mitchell, right? A lot of guys, a lot of Jags, as the great Bill Parcells would call it. Just a guy. A lot of Jags out there. He won a Super Bowl. Go back, look at the Patriots receiving core in 2018. Wasn't very good. I mean, it's, Danny Amendola, and it's, guys. Tom elevated them to eventually become multi-time Super Bowl champions. And the thing that I talked about on Monday, that is always, one of the things that has always separated Tom from Aaron is not just leadership, but trust. Aaron Rodgers doesn't trust his guys no matter how good or how bad they are. Tom does, no matter how good or how bad they are. Scotty Miller dropped what could have been the game-winning touchdown with just over 2 minutes left in that game against the Los Angeles Rams. 2nd and goal from the 6-yard line. Tom delivers him a perfect pass. Perfect pass. And Scotty Miller dropped it. He targeted him numerous times on that game-winning drive. Just a few minutes later. Aaron Rodgers throws the ball to Christian Watson. He drops it. First game of the season against Minnesota. Doesn't throw him a pass until the 4th quarter. You guys make mistakes. Folks, we all make mistakes in life. All of us do. We always talk about, we love to hear that a great redemption story. Like, who doesn't want to hear that? Like, it's why, like, if someone makes a mistake, man, don't kick him to the curb. If they understand the mistake they made and they seek to improve, they make a genuine effort to improve, man, give them the opportunity to do that. Don't ghost them. It's funny that Aaron Rodgers, who's talked about he's a victim of the woke mob and he's been canceled. Funny, he's kind of giving that same treatment to his receivers. Christian Watson makes a mistake. Yeah, I'm not throwing to him. Not throwing him to the 4th quarter or until Matt LaFleur calls a reverse play to where Christian Watson has to touch the ball. For somebody who hates cancel culture, Aaron sure uses it a lot on the field as a quarterback. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing that out there. But this season has been validation for what I've always said about Aaron. He is a generational talent. He just might be the greatest thrower of the football that this game has ever seen. He makes the way he throws the football looks effortless. It's beautiful to watch. He has to be one of the worst leaders I've ever seen at that position in my life. And with the loss of Devontae Adams, with not a clear presence at head coach, with a lot of young guys, just like I said before the season, this was bound to happen. And it's just getting worse. And if and when the Dallas Cowboys show up, a team who Aaron has had a lot of success against, with his old head coach, who he famously had a lot of battles with within those Green Bay walls. If he shows up to Lambeau and gets his old quarterback, I'm gonna be I don't watch Aaron Rodgers interviews live on the McAfee show. I may have to tune in for that one. See who he takes a shot at next. I may have to see that. I really may have to. But this is not shocking at all. Something I did want to mention too, before I get to my Falcons-Panthers prediction. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. The support means a lot. Carving it up, presented by The Grid. The college football playoff rankings came out on Tuesday night. It's the second college football rankings they made. And I'm actually pretty proud of how they looked, because I'll put up my list. I'm going to be doing this for the next few weeks until the final playoff comes out. I always do my top 4 and then the first 2 out, kind of like how ESPN does it. Okay, so you see what my rankings were, 1 through 6 for the podcast audience listening: Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, Tennessee, Oregon. That was my top 6. And I'll be darned if that is not exactly how the playoff committee put their rankings. Now, and I've always been clear about this, the rank, to me, up until the last week, the rankings to me are not necessarily who's better, who's not. I'll put it up again for the streaming audience. I think Michigan is going to beat Ohio State. After looking hard at that matchup, watching these two teams, Michigan runs it right down your throat with Blake Corum. They're effective enough in the passing game, and they are phenomenal on defense. This is a Michigan football team whose game travels. It didn't necessarily do that last year. We saw that when they got smacked by Georgia I think it was in Miami. I think that game was in Miami, and Georgia just pummeled them. Michigan can beat Georgia this year. They did beat Ohio State last year. It's kind of the same Ohio State team, minus some of those receivers. But what does Ohio State always do? They bring in more good receivers, guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. I got Michigan beating Ohio State. That said, though, given the resume to this point, given, that win against Notre Dame, by the way, which, we're starting to think, oh, that doesn't look that impressive. Well, now it looks pretty good. Notre Dame's really turned it around under Marcus Freeman a little bit. I'm fine with Ohio State being number 2. That's why I put them there. But I do think Michigan's going to beat them. Likewise, I absolutely think Tennessee is better than TCU. Matter of fact, I think Oregon's better than TCU. I can't punish an undefeated team with 4 ranked wins. Now, there's a chance TCU loses this week against Texas. By the way, Texas is a 7-point favorite. I'll be pulling hard for the Longhorns right along with McConaughey and everybody. I'll be pulling for Baylor along with Chip and Joanna Gaines and everybody. And then whoever TCU meets in the Big 12 championship game. Should it come to that in order for my Vols to get enough help to get in the college football playoff, I'll be pulling for them. However, 9-0, 4 ranked wins. Tennessee has 5 ranked wins, by the way, but 1 loss to Georgia. I'm just saying, given the resume, given what TCU has put on film, given the coaching job, which has been fantastic, given what TCU has on that roster, I got TCU 4. Now, that could easily change this week. With Tennessee, my Vols got Missouri. Should take care of business. They're 20-point favorites at home. Should take care of Missouri. And then you've got, by the way, coming off a loss to Georgia, I feel bad for I can't say I feel bad for the Missouri Tigers, but, I can understand why one would have sympathy because Tennessee's going to take a lot of their frustrations after getting beat into the ground by Georgia out of the Missouri Tigers for senior day nonetheless. And you have Oregon, who still week in, week out has to hear, yeah, you're good enough to get in, but the 46-point loss to Georgia, it's hard for us to put you in. They got to hear about that every week. TCU, it's kind of like Tennessee, by the way. When Tennessee was ranked number 1 in the playoff, and it's for the first time they're told about how great they are. It's different being the hunter and the hunted. We could see that with TCU this weekend. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, they're used to this. Especially Georgia and Ohio State. They've won national championships recently, right? They've been successful. It's a little bit of a different story for teams like TCU, Tennessee. Tennessee, okay, they've had that humble pie. Got it stuffed down their throats by Georgia and Athens. If they match up again, which I think there's a very good chance that could happen, whether it be in the semifinal or possibly in the national championship game, depending on how the seeding goes, expect that game to be quite a bit closer. That being part of the reason. But put it up again. This is exactly what I had, 1 through 6, and it's exactly how the committee had it. By the way, they had LSU at number 7. That's where I got LSU as well. I got LSU 7. USC 8 I think USC was 8. USC at 8 felt a bit high. It felt a bit high given, how bad that defense has been. I would have probably put UCLA at 8, given what they've shown. But I'm fine with this. I'm not just fine with this ranking. This is exactly how I had it. And so Monday, I'll have my new college football playoff ranking, so definitely stay tuned for that. But chances are it could look different if TCU loses. So we'll see. If TCU doesn't lose, it'll probably look exactly the same. Unless, obviously, somebody else loses, like Ohio State gets shocked or Michigan, Tennessee, or somebody. But last topic of the day, Week 10. Can you believe it? Week 10 in the NFL begins tonight with an NFC South rematch, a game that is a rematch of a game that was played just 2 weeks ago. A crazy game between the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. Over Carolina. For those of you wondering, PJ Walker is going to start at quarterback for the Panthers, although if he struggles, don't be surprised if Baker Mayfield replaces him just like last week, or really just 4 or 5 days ago against the Cincinnati Bengals, when PJ Walker was awful, had like a QBR of 0, I think, and Panthers were down 35-0 at halftime, and Baker Mayfield came in relief and threw a couple garbage time touchdowns. Don't be shocked if Baker Mayfield replaces PJ Walker. But I'm looking at this matchup. I say, okay, we know the offensive pieces Atlanta has. They get Cordarrelle Patterson back from injury, which is huge, given what he produces on a week-to-week basis for this offensive-minded team. Marcus Mariota has been playing really good football as of late. They, once again, in typical Atlanta Falcons fashion, kind of gave that game away against a team that also likes to give games away a lot, that being the Los Angeles Chargers. We all saw that play, 40 seconds left. You had the fumble in Atlanta territory. Falcons pick it up, and the ball just literally falls out of the defensive lineman's hands. It wasn't forced. It just falls out of his hands because it's not like he's a running back. It's not like he's used to having the ball, being a ball carrier. He loses it. Chargers get it back, and they win on a walk-off field goal. It's a heartbreaking loss for the Falcons. But Atlanta's sitting there, and they obviously know this. They win over a 2-win Panthers team, and folks, the Atlanta Falcons are right back on top as the NFC South leaders over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So they sit back. They understand how big this game is. As for Carolina, they had a chance to be in first place in the NFC South had they beaten Atlanta, had DJ Moore not taken off his helmet after a touchdown, had Eddie Pinheiro not missed a long extra point, and then proceeded to miss the game-winning kick in overtime. They've had their moments. They've had their opportunities and have it cashed in, and then just getting the doors blown off them against the Bengals. I've always said this in the NFL. Even when you have teams that we think are tanking, which you could argue that with this Panthers team, there's the embarrassment theory. I've always believed this. When a team gets humiliated, they're going to put up a fight soon after. Heck, you saw this last week with, at times, the Houston Texans. Man, they pushed Philly. Philadelphia didn't cover in that game in Houston last week. Expected to possibly be a similar scenario, although Philadelphia was 13.5-point favorites last week. Falcons are 2.5-point favorites, so different story in that regard in terms of gambling. But I think this game will come down to the last 5 minutes or so. But I trust the Atlanta Falcons run game with Mariota, with Patterson. Drake London scores 2 touchdowns tonight. That's my prediction. Drake London scores a couple tuds tonight. PJ Walker probably gets replaced by Baker Mayfield at some point. I love PJ Walker. He's a phenomenal story, but he probably gets replaced by backup quarterback Baker Mayfield. I will take the Falcons to win this game and cover the 2.5-point spread, 27-22 over the Panthers. I am on a 3-game winning streak on Thursday Night Football. So needless to say, I do feel confident in this pick. Falcons over Panthers, 27-22. They get to 5-5, and they get, for the time being, up atop the NFC South. And they'll be, of course, watching the results of the Buccaneers-Seahawks game, which will be played in Munich, Germany, which that'll be a fascinating matchup, given the Seattle story and Tampa Bay with I think, winning a must-win game against the Rams at home. Otherwise, they would have fell to 3-6. So props to the Atlanta Falcons for getting to this point. I think Arthur Smith has done a tremendous job as a head coach. Some of the offensive pieces that Atlanta has, the defense has been respectable. I don't think they'll need to be great tonight, considering how inept Carolina's offense is. Falcons 27, Panthers 22. All right, that is all the time I have for today's show. As always, be sure to catch Carving It Up Live tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. Also, be sure to check out the Carving It Up podcast on the Grid Podcast Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Network, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, everywhere you listen to your podcasts. You can check that out. The Carving It Up podcast on the Grid Network, along with the All Even podcast, Chaotic Sports podcast, Rocket Fuel podcast, and Clutch Sports Talk podcast. So check all those out with all my guys Barry, Ryan, Alfred, Patrick, everybody involved. Shout out to Mike Guido, too, co-creator of The Grid, as well as everybody who's a part of this growing network. Also, on the Carving It Up YouTube channel, and yes, by the way, subscribe to The Grid YouTube channel as well. On the Carving It Up YouTube channel, be sure to like, share, comment, and hit that big red subscribe button. It takes you 2 seconds. Just hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Be notified anytime that we put out any new content, whether it be a video or whether it be a live show Monday, Thursday, or Friday. Predictions tomorrow, week 10. I'm coming off of 2 really hot weeks. I'm on a hot streak. I'm feeling it right now. I'm like Steph Curry on a Monday night against the Sacramento Kings, man. I'm feeling it. Hope everybody has a great evening out there. See y'all tomorrow. Please continue to stay safe out there. There's flu going around, COVID going around, a lot of stuff going around. So protect yourselves, protect your loved ones. Stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. And my Vols are going to get in the playoffs, by the way. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.